And so if we're living in this world where there are people of different race, different socioeconomic status, different class, different caste, etc., is prejudice unavoidable? Is this something that is always going to be around? Prejudice just being preformed, usually unfavorable opinions. Okay, so are these things natural or unavoidable? Okay, like we've already said, this is part of our enculturation. So beliefs about different races or prejudice or discrimination, these are things we've been taught, whether explicitly or implicitly, through the process of enculturation. And so what's really good about this and about recognizing this is that these are learned behavioral patterns, which means that they can be unlearned, or they can be untaught, or we can choose to not teach them. We can be more conscious about how we teach about different categories of people, or if we teach about categories of people. Okay, so no, the short answer is no. Prejudice and discrimination are not inevitable. Okay, but it is difficult because it's part of our enculturation process. These are things that feel very natural to us. But if we are aware of that, we can begin to unlearn those behaviors and choose, or be very conscious in choosing not to teach those behaviors or thought process. Okay, I do want to talk briefly about two different types of discrimination. So we have explicit and disguised discrimination. Okay, explicit discrimination is easier to identify because it's explicit. There's no attempt to hide it or cover it up or obscure it at all. Okay, usually these are going to be institutions and laws, while disguised discrimination can live well beyond the official end of its explicit source. So if you have explicit discrimination against people with dark skin tones in the United States, we no longer have laws that explicitly discriminate against people with dark skin. But we do have a lot of disguised discrimination. Okay, so an example that's very easy for us to think about in terms of disguised discrimination is having or being followed in a store because you have dark skin. Okay, while the law that says you can't go into that store no longer exists, the disguised discrimination does continue on, and maybe if you have dark skin, you are followed in a store. Okay, that's just a very easy example. Anthropology and anthropologists have a long history of standing up against both explicit and disguised discrimination. Okay, explicit discrimination is obviously easier to see, but because anthropologists try to uncover these hidden aspects of our society, we oftentimes can uncover disguised discrimination that is overlooked by people in the society. This gives us a unique perspective and a unique way to stand up against discrimination of both the explicit and disguised kinds. One of the most disguised or unrecognized types of discrimination is what we call unearned privilege. This is an unnoticed or underappreciated lack of discrimination. So privilege being a lack of discrimination. And so the classic example highlighted by Peggy McIntosh is that having light skin in the U.S. is unearned privilege because you can do everyday thing without attention or judgment directed at them. As someone with very light skin, I can pretty much do whatever I like, whenever I like. Okay, obviously I can't break the law, but as someone with light or lighter skin, I can pretty much behave how I like without risk of additional judgment or things directed at me. So as an example, someone with light skin, I can be angry in public. I can be angry, and someone with darker skin runs the risk of being seen or stereotyped as the angry black woman if they are angry in public, for example. Okay, so I have this unearned privilege because I have this light skin. Okay, and so I get to do everyday things without additional attention or judgment that might not be the same for someone with darker skin. Okay, and so it's important that we fight discrimination from both sides, from people who are being actively discriminated against and those who aren't. Okay, because by utilizing my unearned privilege, I'm playing into this discrimination, whether I know it or not. So it's important to begin to recognize this privilege and to fight against it. And by doing so, fighting for people who don't have this privilege. or vice versa, fighting for people who don't have the privilege, thereby fighting against the unearned privilege.